let's start this report with the idea that with the energies going on right now, it's a great time to practice different techniques and meditations around breath, like breath exercises, kind of like Wim Hof exercises and meditations, where you use breath to assist you to more greatly go deeper into meditation. But what I want to suggest is that you add clapping, add the hands to the meditation, to the breath work at intervals, and you can experiment where you do the clapping. But what it does is that's why people traditionally bring their hands together in prayer, because it has to do with union. And that's one of the strong ideas that I want to bring forth in this report is the union, because of the eclipses that are happening. We're in the eclipse cycles right now. And union is the coming together. So it's the sun and the moon. It is love and war. It is the light and the darkness, black and white. So it's that coming together, that union, that conjunction. And when we clap, when you bring those hands together, it's like we think of, when do we applaud? We clap and we applaud, when we go to shows, when we go to see great events. And it's basically to honor somebody. It's an expression of love for something great that has been done. So it's a deep, great expression of love. It's like when we see people go to battles like football, basketball, and they applaud, they cheer. It's like that, bringing that heart energy out, that supportive heart energy which nurtures. And then we also applaud to recognize, in the same kind of context, like in sports, great warriors that put themselves on the line and do things that we normally wouldn't do. So what we're doing is we're recognizing those great talents and those abilities that those particular people have. I think of like Cavalia or the circus or something, when people ride those horses and, they come through and they're riding through the ring and they're like, barely hanging off the side of the horse, or they're balancing themselves like in some crazy acrobatic way on the horse. It's so we applaud people who put themselves on the line, who put themselves out into dangerous situations. We applaud people who put on great performances of beauty, and we recognize those things. And so that's why when we clap, we're stimulating that heart energy. When we clap, we're stimulating that heart energy, and that's kind of like what kind of I think is a great idea to bring into this current time period. So I suggest working on those things and just have fun with it, because if you get into a meditative state and then you bring in the clapping, you're bringing those two halves of yourself together. You're bringing the moon and the sun together, and you're stimulating that heart, that center energy. And right now is a time when, because we're stimulating that heart energy, and in the esoteric philosophy, the human being is a representation of the center or the middle or the heart. We're stimulating new ideas of what it truly is to be human. We need to transcend and surpass our past ideas of what it is to be human and to break new territory. So I just kind of wanted to put that in there. So, get those hands together and stimulate that heart energy. So a quick synopsis of this report. It has to do with love and war. All is fair in love and war, that kind of idea. So it also has to do with pain and pleasure. So we're bringing in these dualities. And then it also has to do with ignorance and bliss. And I'll get more into that in a minute. So today is November 19th, 2021. We just had the eclipse last night. We're also going to be talking about ideas of complicated problems can have simple answers. So that's that, Scorpio energy on the same axis with Taurus energy. So this full moon Taurus eclipse is at 27 degrees, 14 minutes of Taurus, and it's on the north node. and it happens on the Mayan day 9 eagle. But before I get into all this, I said I would read the story of the blue deer, and I believe it has some context, because we're just getting towards, today's I think the 10th day of the Mayan. No, today is actually the 9th day of the Mayan 13-day period of deer, and today is 9 eagle. And so a lot of this energy right now has to do with freedom. So anyway, a long time ago, there was a tribe called the Huicholes that lived in the desert of Mexico. It was a time of crisis and challenge as food, water, and rations were scarce. The elders gathered and decided to send out 4 young men to go hunt, gather, and bring back basically whatever they could. Each of the 4 men represented the 4 directions, so north, south, east, and west, and that also represents fire, air, water, and earth, which also represents spirit, thought, emotion, and then the physical body. They set out on their quest into the desert, which is significant of Scorpio, the sign of Scorpio. And exhausted after days of searching and finding nothing, and then one morning came along as the sun was rising, they spotted a blue deer off in the distance. Filled with enthusiasm, and that's the energy of Sagittarius, they began to track the deer and hunt the deer. Every time it was just when they thought they were getting close enough to, draw the arrow and attack the deer, it seemed to get farther and farther away very mysteriously. So after days, they eventually started to lose hope. And they decided to sleep for the night, and in the morning they followed the deer up into the mountains, and so that's symbolic of Capricorn. While ascending the mountain, they saw the deer just up the incline near the edge of a cave. They released their arrows, but the deer quickly jumped out of the way. As they reached the edge of the cave, they became very confused because the deer had basically vanished and was nowhere to be found. But they looked down, and their arrows had landed in some peyote cactus shaped in the form of a blue deer that was on the ground. So they went ahead and picked these peyote buttons from the cactus. They took the cactus and they returned, and they shared it with the elders and with the people. And when they consumed the peyote, suddenly their thirst and their hungers disappeared. To this day, tribes still go on the peyote hunt or the vision quest to connect with ancestors and find inner guidance and direction for cleansing. So I wanted to go ahead and bring this story in. It's not necessarily, I'm not advocating for you to go out and do peyote or mescaline, but it's the idea of how sometimes we search after something because of our basic instinctual needs. That's that Scorpio energy. And in the process, we may find something greater than ourselves, And there's a lot of symbolism in that story, like the cave is a symbolism for the third eye, or the deeper aspect of our intuitive self and how we connect with that deeper aspect. And there's a lot of symbolism in it. And I wouldn't say it's not religion, but it's religiousness, which is different. It's coming into a connection with a deeper aspect of ourself. And the realization that there's so much more going on than we care to admit sometimes, or that modern scientific viewpoints care to admit in today's society. So I wanted to kind of give that some context, and we'll come back to it. So this full moon in Taurus, we should also look at it as the fact that this is the full moon in Taurus is the culminating point of the actual cycle of Scorpio. So the sun in the sign of Scorpio, and then it culminates with that full moon in Taurus right before it goes into Sagittarius here. And so we could actually call this the full moon of Scorpio, and that's kind of how they look at it in esoteric astrology. So there's a very strong scorpionic element to this. So it's happening on the Mayan day 9 eagle, and so that represents, has a lot to do with freedom. I'll come back to that here in a second. So this was like a 3.5 hour event. It was like one of the longest lunar eclipse periods in quite a while. The previous lunar eclipse that happened at 27 degrees Taurus was all the way back on November 20th, 2002. So it was about, 19 years ago or so. So Taurus is the sign of the light bringer, okay? And there's an association with Venus and the Luciferic morning star. So it has to do with the revealing of light that is hidden within matter. So it has to do with revelation. So there's connections here to Venus, and there's connections here to Uranus. And it also has an association to the use of the third eye in order to actually discover this light. And this third eye, there's, we talked a little bit about it in the last report, because that fixed star was conjunct the bull's eye. So it's bringing a lot of this, of the idea forward that more and more people are coming into a revelation of a deeper truth than, say, the illusionary outward truth, or the circumference truth, or superficial truths. I think of, Taurus is very associated with beauty and form and art, and, the outward garments that are worn. We can wear outward garments, we can wear costumes, we can wear different kinds of clothes every day. You can, Halloween kind of represents that. You can dress up as a different character. But no matter how many different characters you dress up as, or even the one that you're believing yourself to be, it still hides or veils a deeper aspect of yourself. And that's kind of the key idea in that. So Taurus, at the highest point, reveals the light, the divinity which is hidden within matter. So, I think of the idea that spirit is matter vibrating at its highest degree, and matter is basically spirit vibrating at its lowest frequency. And so if we kind of look at that, this is a time when we can really see beyond the apparent forms that may fool many people. So it's looking deep into that. And then Venus, Venus basically on the 17th, 2 days ago, she just started her Venus retrograde shadow period. So that's pretty cool. That happened at 11 degrees of Capricorn. She's going to go up a little bit further. And eventually, I think it's on December 20th, 21st, she's going to go retrograde and then come back to that 11 degrees. So we're in that shadow phase right now. We're in that period where little by little, degree by degree, we're going to be able to see deeper. We're going to be able to look into the abyss deeper, look into the ravine deeper. Or, it's kind of like the more you foster and cultivate or clear that connection with your third eye, it's like your third eye is like the torch, which helps you through the maze, through the labyrinth. And that's kind of what this time can be like. And that Venus retrograde coming up and us being in the shadow right now is triggering the necessity to more deeply find the values that really matter, not only to ourselves, but on an even higher level collectively. What are those values that we really need to hold on to, and which ones are ones that are historically outdated, which are archaic? What are the Neolithic values? I'm sorry, am I using the right terminology? What are these cavewoman mentality or attitudes or perspectives that we need to dissolve and let go? And when I say let go, I mean let go ideologically as well as emotionally, for the betterment of all human beings, not just a few select or a particular group. So, that I wanted to highlight that energy. So the light hidden within form. Some of the aspects at the time of this eclipse, the moon moon eclipse in Taurus is it's making a trine to Pluto, so that supports that really deep ability to move forward and evolve. It's basically, it's time to move forward, and this is a really supportive energy for doing so. That doesn't mean that resistance won't be met by outside forces, but it does mean that I guess you could kind of think of the symbolism of like the bull in the china shop. That bull let loose, and everything getting broken, but it's also that energy of not being satisfied, not being content. The contents within that shop, within that china shop, can be replaced. And if they can't be replaced, they can be recreated. It's the idea of not being complacent and moving into a place where we can, recognize the deeper aspects of ourselves and then take action forward, being anchored in those deeper aspects of ourselves. Some other aspects at the time of this eclipse as it happens, and I'm highlighting these because it's kind of like a snapshot, kind of like a birth chart. It sets the tone of the energy from now until the full moon and possibly after. So we want to associate these themes with energy that's going to stick around over the next few weeks. Uranus trine Venus. Okay, so there's more Earth, because Venus is in Capricorn. So right now it's really about grounding these insights as we kind of like wander the labyrinth and make new discoveries and new insights, and we come into alignment with deeper values and we anchor them. It's all about anchoring and grounding these insights. And then Uranus at the same time is making an opposition to Mars. So we also have Venus sextile Mars, and then Astrea is conjunct Venus. So that Venus in Capricorn, in addition to really grounding, she's assisting us, because Astrea, as I mentioned in the last report, can represent, she was the last goddess that departed from the earthly physical realm before humanity fell into the dark ages, the Iron Age. And so she can in a way represent a return, because she's symbolic of a higher state of consciousness collectively, like a golden age. And she can also represent that which is hard to let go of. And Capricorn can be very sensitive to traditional values. Capricorn can be very conservative, as well as it's that energy of not wanting to let go or to hold on because of an element of insecurity. So there could be elements of wanting to hold on to something because you feel insecure. You may not even know why you're holding on to it on a conscious level. And it basically is a process of insecurity of why you're holding on to a particular thing, person, idea, situation. And this can be a great time to allow it to be free. I'm just going to go with that, because part of the huge theme with this report is freedom. And what is freedom? I kind of opened that a little early in this report, but freedom. Let's ask the question, what is freedom? Freedom is, not being held or imprisoned or contained by something else. Not being under the influence of a dictator or a tyrant. But freedom also means to be transformed, completely transformed. And these are associations with that eagle sign. Like I said, eagle is associated with Scorpio as a transformational sign, and this eclipse happened on the Mayan day 9 eagle. When you go into a deep meditation, you are freeing yourself from the busy distractions of the mind, because in many ways daily the mind, and then the beliefs that it attaches to become like a prison, right? So when you go into a deep meditation, you're freeing yourself. You're gaining a freedom from that. When you are truly in a higher love state, not a lower love state, you become free. You become free of the chains, the chains of lower love, which bind you. If we look at love, love is such a complicated topic, but if we look at love, okay, lower aspects of love, it's like you cannot be what you are against. You cannot take action in the same way to that which you vocalize you are against. You cannot voice that which you are against in the same way, because then you become what you are against. So in a love a lot of times fools people in that way. A lot of times people will proclaim their stance or their position, their perspective in the name of love, yet it's not really love, because they're actually coming from a place of hatred or anger. So as that Einstein kind of gave us the simple equation. Well, what was it? That you cannot solve a problem at the same level that it exists. You have to actually go to a higher level. You have to go to a higher peak in order to solve that problem. You have to go to a higher frequency. So, this is a time period where we are learning collectively how to not solve the problem on the same level that it's created, but to go to a higher level to actually solve that problem. So I'm going on a few different tangents here. There's a yod at the time of this eclipse, okay? Venus, sextile Mars, and then they're both connected to black moon Lilith at the point. I'll put the chart up here. So we have this yod, which is, I've talked about yods before. This is a very powerful focalizing laser beam kind of energy, and it's a very powerful transmutation of perspective, of info and information. We have that black moon Lilith in Gemini, and her connections to there's a sextile between Venus and Mars. So as I mentioned in the beginning of this report, the hands that come together that represent the duality of opposite sides, or apparent opposite sides, coming together in a union. That's that Mars sextile Venus, the feminine and the masculine, the mother and the father. So it's a very creative energy, and it's coming together, and it's the point is black moon Lilith in Gemini. The nodes are about to finally change signs, and so this is a culmination point of what are we going to create from our deeper insights into all the shadowy things that have come from massive information, massive disinformation over the last couple of years, and how that needs to be synthesized in order to actually move forward. But it's the idea that when you bring opposite polarities together and you synthesize them, you're going to create greater possibilities for yourself and everybody moving forward than to continue to battle it out and be in a place where you're not willing to budge in your perspective. So I kind of see that as this is a great opportunity to really transform the dualities and to create something new. It's kind of like when creating a sword or something. It's like the gathering of those metals and then the combining of them, and and it goes into a liquid, and then that liquid is poured into a mold, and it creates a sword, and the sword is the creative manifestation of that whole process of these things coming together, including the person who actually created it, and the craft, the detail, the craftsmanship that they actually put into it, the consciousness that they put into that new form. So more aspects. Neptune in Pisces making a trine to the Sun, Vulcan, and Mercury. Once again, I just kind of described that whole Vulcan process. And they're, Sun, Vulcan, and Mercury all in Scorpio. This is, really about getting deeper. But it's also, I kind of put this down as a beautiful possibility. It's a time for recognizing beauty. Once again, it's that Taurus Scorpio axis, being able to see the beauty beneath the form. It takes real honesty to be in alignment with oneself, just to be real. Like I said, we're coming into a place where we're discovering newer and higher ways to what it is to really be human, and what that actually represents, and the integrity and the truth and the sincerity that's involved with actually really being human, and the responsibility that comes with that, the responsibility for animals, for other humans, for taking care of ourselves, taking care of the planet, or at least working with the planet. In a lot of ways, the planet is taking care of us, and the planet will do what it needs to do to bring us back into balance, because we come from the Mother Earth. So those aspects are going on. I think of the lyric in another Iggy Pop and the Stooges reference to one of the songs. The lyric is "Love in the middle of a firefight," and I see that just that Scorpio Taurus kind of axis. There's so much rich imagery in that sentence. Love in the middle of a firefight, and I think it, originally had to do with some of the wars going on at the time. I don't know if it was the Vietnam War or what, but it was just superimposed with the imagery of people making love, and it's our desire to have union and to have love, while at the same time in the world conflict and lack of harmony exists. And so there's the imagery superimposed on one another kind of sums up an energy right now. Love in the middle of a firefight. There's a lot of protests going on right now. And, if you kind of really distance yourself in that Aquarian way and you go up to the balcony, it's like, what is really happening there with these protests? No matter what the agenda or the topic is that, people protest and come together out of a connection of love. There's something important to it. If there was nothing important to it, it wouldn't even happen. If there was nothing important to it, the element of love wouldn't be there, because love is basically, it's like a super glue. It's a super adhesive that brings people together. And it's that search for love in the middle of that firefight, in the middle of war. So a big, topic of this whole report has to do with love and war. Is all fair in love and war? It's kind of like, it represents those dualities, love and war, pain and pleasure. And I'll get to ignorance and bliss here in another second. But, I think of, I'll come back to it in a second. So to follow this up, the moon, there's an exact T-square between the moon in Taurus, Jupiter in Aquarius, and then the Sun, Vulcan, and Mercury in Scorpio, right? So, with this T-square, that's very creative, dynamic tension, like which way is it going to go? Well, that moon in Taurus can, on the lower aspect, can mean, we're feeling very comfortable with where we're at. And that's what I'm saying. We want to work against being too comfortable, too complacent. In a lot of ways, comfort, complacency, being surrounded by all kinds of lovely material objects and possessions can be an actual trap spiritually to us evolving. Taurus is the bull, but we can associate it with the cow, that is very complacent in the field, very peaceful. you know, it's very hard sometimes to define what the actual line is between peacefulness and what it actually means. You know, a lot of times peacefulness can be harmful. In a higher spiritual degree, it's that peace that we find when we go into meditation, for instance, that brings us closer to Source. And that's the peacefulness that we want to seek, because it actually tells us how to act in a more appropriate way with a higher degree of integrity. But the peacefulness that keeps us complacent and unconscious is the kind of peacefulness that we don't necessarily want to adhere to. And you know, that I guess that brings me back to kind of what I was just talking about a little bit, which is the idea of ignorance and bliss. You know, it's like we're always afraid of what we don't actually understand. You know, it's the classic people being afraid of what they don't know or don't understand. It's like the classic idea of aliens. You know, we want to kill, we want to fight and kill that which we're afraid of, or what we've been taught to be afraid of. And it's the idea that ignorance is bliss. And so it's like, you know, it's like the whole idea of, you know, I kind of put it down as that you would think that the opposite of fear is bliss, but in certain ways it's more like fear is mirrored in bliss. And this is based on the idea that ignorance is bliss. And it's the idea that we fear what we don't understand, and ignorance is bliss. And I want to, you know, bring this into the connection to the fact that this eclipse is conjunct the fixed star of ALGOL, which traditionally in astrology a lot of people associate with like evil, and like, you know, anything to do with ALGOL is like horrible and terrible, and all these bad things are going to happen. But, you know, I kind of, you know, relating it to this ignorance is bliss that I'm talking about right now. You know, a lot of times that bliss is that complacency. And, you know, you may think that you're in a state of contentedness or relaxation, but deep under the surface, you may not be in alignment. You know, a lot of times bliss, what we've been taught bliss is, what happiness is actually a trap. It's actually a way to remain in an unconscious state. So right now is the time, like I said, you know, bring those, the union of opposites together, even if it creates friction, because right now is the time when we want to be so much more alive. We want to recognize every moment in its most aliveness that we can actually recognize it and appreciate it for. That way we can actually take conscious actions that are really mattering and really necessary right now. So, you know, I wouldn't see this whole thing as the fixed star ALGOL as a negative thing. ALGOL is basically, it's an eclipsing binary star in the severed head of Medusa. Everybody's heard of Medusa. Medusa was the Gorgon, and this is in the constellation of Perseus, right? So it can represent a fearful appearance of something, a fearful appearance that turned, you know, she represented a fearful appearance. Any onlooker who gazed upon Medusa basically was, you know, turned to stone. They were killed. They were turned to stone immediately. And so there's a lot of connections here between being paralyzed or paralysis and contentedness, which basically means, you know, it's kind of the deer in the headlights, not being able to take action or not being able to move. It can also represent the opposite. People, you know, that's once again why people are coming together to protest, because it's the extreme opposite of that. And this can have to do with extremism or being extremist, you know, taking action. There's connections to the root word of Medusa, being connected to actually, there's connections to jellyfish in the root word of it. And that's probably because, you know, jellyfish have those tentacles. Medusa had hair that was basically like live snakes that were like wiggling and wreathing, and it kind of represented that darkness and the poison involved. And so there's a connection to jellyfish, because jellyfish actually, when they some of them, when they sting, they can paralyze a person. Connections to the nervous system. So this whole energy points to being in connection with these darker aspects instead of being paralyzed by these darker aspects, and in that way we transform it into a love energy that we can actually take definite action towards. We face our fears. That's what this time is about. Coming out of that complacent Taurian energy. And in the process, that's the Scorpio is the battlefield. And then raising it to that higher, that full moon Taurus energy, which is being able to see beyond the illusion of form, and also not getting too identified with the illusion of form or with identity itself that we choose. So with the fixed star ALGOL, that which is evil may serve a higher purpose yet to be revealed. That's a really tough area to get into, because a lot of times it's very hard to justify what we see as bad things. And we don't necessarily need to, think of anything too horrible or evil or bad. We can think of just the daily things, you know what I mean? You get stuck at a stoplight, or somebody gives you a call and says we can't move forward yet with the project, and so you have to deal with your patience. There's old stories about don't ever judge immediately what a situation is, what it is, because it could actually be something completely different. I don't really have time to go into that story, but never judge. It's like the story of the blue deer. There's always something greater to be discovered, even if it completely goes against your reason or your logic. And a lot of times that which is spirit is hidden quite a ways behind. It's the wizard behind the curtain. And it's just like, we got to stay on that yellow brick road, so to say. It's that golden brick road. It's, we got to have the trust to continue on the path, and not get distracted with various things along the way. We need to be more concerned with the path itself, and just being on the path and being in the integrity of the path and the journey itself, than the footsteps that we're leaving behind, that the reputation that we're creating on the way. So it's deciphering that. I'm getting a little off topic here, but I also wanted to note this is probably pulling like a super metaphysical rabbit out of a really deep hat, but I thought it was interesting that Medusa, if you look at the word, if you split it in half, it's Med USA. So I don't know if that really means anything, but what the hell, I thought I'd throw it in the report. Maybe something highly important or developing will occur, that's rooted or connected with USA or the United States. The USA or the United States is coming up to its Pluto return. So anyway, let's move beyond that. So there's also connections to this full moon and the star of ALGOL with the ideas or the words of to measure or measurement, to ponder, to meditate upon, to meditate, to seek that final resolution or cure. And it's also, very importantly, a reunion of broken parts. Once again, that's that coming together, that union of opposites. Let's see here. I talked about some of these aspects. So the mantra for Taurus, the esoteric mantra, is I see, and when the eye is opened, all is illumined. When I see, or I see, and when the third eye is opened, all is illumined. That's the mantra for Taurus. And Taurus rules the new group of world servers. That is a term in the esoteric theosophical perspective. And it basically represents a group which has nothing to do with an actual group in a sense that we understand it. It's not a group that's based on organized uniformity. Like a lot of times we'll see a church is based on uniformity, or a military is based on uniformity, or a particular political group versus another political group will be based on uniformity, which is basically conformity or keeping in line with a particular uniform or direction or idea, and not being able to actually veer away from it or budge away from it. So in a way, uniformity is a straitjacket. Uniformity, well, it's a uniform. Uniform is a uniform. It's worn by individuals that are in a collective that is defined by uniformity. So in a lot of ways, uniformity or a uniform is an imprisonment to the idea which it's trying to represent, to the platform from which that idea is being projected out into the world. So the new group of world servers just means it's a group that is not chained or defined by uniformity. In fact, it's actually based in a consciousness. And that consciousness is made up of those who are aspirants, those who are disciples, those who are initiates, those who are essentially seeking to find the deeper parts of themselves. In fact, it's most likely that if you're watching this video, or if you're in any way, shape, or form involved in, you're curious about, what is life about? What are the deeper meanings behind life? What are my deeper purposes and roles? Then you're probably just by default in that group, new group of world servers. It doesn't even need to be called the new group of world servers. It's basically just the collective. It's the collective sum or body of every individual, every human being that is on the path to discover more of themselves and to basically be in like a higher state of consciousness, a higher degree of integrity, to bring more love to the world. So if you're watching this video, you're probably already just part of that group, and you just kind of know that. And this Taurus energy brings a lot of that out. It's I see, and when the eye is opened, all is illumined. And so this is a great time when that illumination can come forth. When this group of seekers that, and there's so many more than I think that people really know of, they're in their millions and millions. This is a great time to be vocal about that. Be vocal about your want, your seeking of a better world, to express ideas that you have associated with that, and how we can make this a better world, and to basically be on the front lines, the forefront, to be in the vanguard of that. This report is about getting away from being complacent. And so because this is the full moon of Scorpio, right, as I explained earlier, the mantra for Scorpio is warrior I am, and from the battle I emerge triumphant. And so that's kind of also an energy that we want to consider right now, being in that warrior mindset. All right, so I talked about the fixed star of ALGOL. And then on 11/20, on the 20th, the day, Mayan day 10 Vulture, Mercury makes a square to Jupiter. Venus is still conjunct Astrea. Venus retrograde shadow period begins on the 17th. I talked about that. I want to highlight that Venus conjunct Astrea. And then Venus will be in Capricorn basically from November 5th all the way until March 5th, I'll get into more Venus stuff later. But on the 20th, there could be strong, there could be glitches in communication, or really big conflicting communications. And Venus, conjunct Astrea in Capricorn, is helping to resolve and to synthesize on a deeper, more foundational level, especially now that she's in her shadow phase. On the 21st, on the Mayan day 11 quake, it's the 11th day of this Mayan 13-day period of Deer. Mercury makes a sextile to Pluto, so there, immediately the next day there can be this like really charged, possibly obsessive communication, a flurry of communication about that which happened the day before. The same day the sun moves into Sagittarius, so there can be a lightening up of the energies depending on what happened. It can also inflame those energies too. There's downsides to Sagittarius. The upsides is vision, and looking into the future and being a lot more motivated and a lot more like detached and kind of ready to go on adventure. The downsides can be condemning other people, trying to convert other people, and make other people basically into another version of yourself, or a group trying to make other groups into basically themselves. So, I don't know, maybe I'm getting too cliche here, but why not? I think of the classic scene, I think it's in Return of the Jedi, Star Wars, when Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader are fighting in the Emperor's chamber. And it gets to the point where Luke has to throw down his weapon, his lightsaber, and he's just like, I'll never turn to the dark side. And, if we think about what that dark side is, what Darth Vader represents, he's basically, he lost his way. This is kind of the symbolism of it. He lost his way to the machine. He became a machine. He became of the machine. He lost connection to his soul, or deeper, his actual real human or spiritual nature. He, basically it's like what we would call a sellout, or, giving in to the man, or like, losing that soul aspect. And it's that kind of like, I'll never become that, is kind of that warrior energy, warrior I am, and from the battle I emerge triumphant kind of energy that we want to hold on to right now. Okay, so on the 23rd, well, I wanted to say also that on the 21st, the moon moves into Cancer, so that can be a very inward time as well, where we're really going inward and we're really building up our confidence for the visions that we want to go ahead and take forward from here forward. And that's a very fostering and loving energy as well. On the 23rd is the final day of the Mayan 13-day period of Deer, and it turns out to be the Mayan 13-day of 13 rain. Okay, and that's, we see that as the culmination of this 13-day period. I've noticed there's been a lot of, in different areas of the world, a lot of flooding. Here in the Northwest, up by Canada, up by Bellingham, Washington, I forget where else, there was another place in the world, including an area, I think it was in Egypt, where there was mass flooding and it brought out the scorpions. But I mean, this can be a time of excessiveness, as I mentioned in the last report, of feast or famine. And it's kind of like, bringing those floods which cleanse. I kind of talked a lot about this in the last report. But it also has to do with rain can also equate with communication. And it can equate with communication from the spirit, and we have to understand that spirit communicates differently than how we are used to communication, which is the traditional mercurial communication of simply connecting dots from A to B and B to C and C to D. Spirit doesn't connect the dots like that. Sometimes spirit just comes right in with the letter Z, and then it goes from Z to L, and from L to A, and it just there's no straight lines in nature in that sense, and there's no direct logical reasoning in the communication of spirit. Spirit speaks in metaphor. Spirit speaks in the abstract. Spirit speaks through the intuitive and basically the formless. And so our reason asks, how the hell does spirit, how can something be communicated without a form? And that's what intuition is all about. So, right now is a great time, because it's 13 rain, it's the culmination. It's about going into that deep meditative place. During this whole 13-day period, you may have noticed yourself having a lot of memories from the past. Trivial memories, or maybe even significant memories that were associated with very important times in your life. You may have noticed memories coming up that might have been associated with trauma, or fear, or anger, just in general things of the past. I mentioned in the last report that this whole period can kind of have a retrograde kind of feel to it. And, a lot of that's been coming up because it's all about movement, and it's about the movement that occurs on very subtle levels as well as physical levels. So that being said, I wanted to mention too that possible earth shaking events can happen on the 21st and the 23rd. That's the Mayan Day 11 quake and the Mayan Day 11 rain. But on a more significant level, these next couple days after this eclipse, and those days in particular, can be very transforming days that move, that shake us. As it's like we can have that earth changing or that earthquake energy happen to us collectively or individually, that kind of shakes us up. Sometimes things need to be shaken up in order for us to really wake up and become aware of our surroundings in a completely different way than we were. Kind of goes with the whole theme of this, getting away from that complacency. And I guess that just about sums it up. I wanted to, talk about the ideas of duality and love and war. And I also, it's like I think of that, like Lord of the Rings, the idea of the Shire, where the story began, in the Shire, kind of, where everything is sort of complacent. And they're just basically loving, kind of jolly, hobbits, that are, you can see most of the theme of The Hobbit is based around very Taurus-like energies: food, drinking, peaceful life. In a lot of ways, there was, gossip, and, that small town kind of thing, and very simple people, simple life. And I forget, at one point in there, in the beginning, one of them, they were drinking in their little pub or whatever it was, and one of them just said, don't go around poking into the business of the outside world, and all will be good if you just kind of like mind your own business. Well, that's that Taurian energy. And it's like once they left and they went on the adventure, and they, their world opened up, it became a much bigger world, which is kind of like the symbolism of Scorpio. So, we want to go towards that bigger adventure right now, getting out into the world, even if it means kind of putting ourselves on the line. Because there's a lot more importance out there. It was kind of put forth that, if they would have never done anything, the Shire would have basically been like torched and trampled and, imprisoned. And, you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. So, it's like time to move out of complacency, time to move out of the Shire, time to move into places of risk or potentially danger. And that doesn't always mean just out there in the physical world. It can mean in your ideas and the ideas that you're putting forth. It's time to put forth risky ideas. It's time to put forth things that are conflicting with your life when things are just going along smoothly, you know. When things are going along smoothly, you really, most of the time, have no necessity to change anything or to take risks, because you want to keep that smooth, uninterrupted inertia of what it is that you think is making you feel good. So, you know, anyway, back to that, those two imageries of love in the middle of a firefight, you know, over the imageries melding together. But anyway, I hope you got something out of this. Much love to you, and I will see you for the next report. Just to really quick to highlight that story of the blue deer. You know, once again, it's significant. It's time to, you know, get out of the Shire and go on the journey. It's time to go on the hunt. And in the process, it's not about the hunt itself, and that we might actually get something that's going to satisfy our hunger or satisfy our desires, what we want, what we instinctually want right here and right now. It's about the greater things that could happen in the process, that could open us up, open our hearts up, clear our minds in the process, things that can help us see beyond ourselves in a greater, more expansive picture in how we approach the world, in order to make it a more beautiful place and heal it. So anyway, my name is Billy Kyle. Much love to you. I'll see you in the next report. Have a good one. Bye-bye.